So I want to talk about the psychological gesture and how when you have a story that you're telling instead of showing, so it's expositional. And if you would show me what was happening, the story would be a whole lot more interesting. So in this case, you're telling me the example of your family's sense of humor, and you're describing the sense of humor. What would be more interesting is to allow us to see the sense of humor that the family has, right? So what is the oddest thing about the sense of humor that your family, of your family? What's the oddest? Just one adjective.
One adjective of the oddest thing. I don't even, my brain's at a blank for what an adjective is. I'm sorry.
In one word, how would you describe the sense of humor?
Dark, callous.
Is that the intention?
I'm not sure there's that intention is not behind it.
Okay. So something happens when you're doing solo work that when you write in this tense of, let me describe my family's sense of humor, as opposed to just letting us see a scene where the humor is happening and we can see the dynamics of the family. Who's the official leader of the family, but who's really the person pulling the strings? What is the humor intended to do? Is it intended to bring everybody closer together? Is it intended to create division? Is it intended to make us feel more important, right? Is it ironic? Is it, if you allow us to see the scene and you let the characters speak from their greatest need, right? In a room of people telling jokes. They want everybody to laugh, all right? If it's the dad, he wants everybody to laugh. He wants to know all of his kids are happy, right? He leads with a joke to grab your attention, right? That moment in which he grabs your attention is the inciting incident of the scene. So instead of telling me about it, give me an example and allow that scene to unfold, not in your words, but in the character's words, okay? And the importance of the inciting incident here in creating the psychological gesture is that the inciting incident is the thing that happens that causes the scene to begin. This is particularly important in solo work, right? Because you have to delineate characters, places, times, which character are you being right now? Where are we in the timeline? It has to be really, 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 really clear and really, 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 really active, right? So if you begin with the incident, which is dad's going to tell a joke, everybody has to stop doing what you're doing at the family reunion, gather around the table because he's going to tell the joke. That's the inciting incident that begins the scene. Always start with the inciting incident.
Okay.
And whatever his first sentence is, it's a key to what he wants in the scene. Okay, he's trying to grab you with that first line, whether it's knock knock, whether it's whether it's a big question that you're supposed to have an answer to. It's going to be extremely active. And the point of view that he takes in that first line is the key to the psychology of his character. How does he present this joke, right? How does he grab everybody's attention, right? If it's like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and it's really mellow and he's just, what about if one day you're walking down the street, right? That's a psychological gesture. It's in the rhythm, it's in the language. One day you're just walking down the street, or if it's madness like Jamie Foxx talking about Prince. That's a pretty motherfucker. I'm not gay, but that's a pretty motherfucker. Right? That's the psychological gesture. That's how he gets our attention. Okay? So the psychological gesture and the inciting incident are closely related. okay? In a well-made play or a screenplay, a person may not have to attack that way. There's lots of other ways to do storytelling in film, right? There's a lot of visual storytelling that can cue people into the inciting incident. In a well-made play, there's other characters who can make an entrance. We can move to another scene. There's lots of different things to indicate that an inciting incident is happening in a well-made play. In a solo play, a one-person play, it's you. You are making the entrances, you are making the exits, you are creating the inciting incident, you are creating the conflict, you have each character pushing up against another character so that we see that those two characters with deep psychological needs are at odds with each other. You're pushing and doing all the pulling. So if any of that is muddy in the storytelling, if any of that is explaining instead of doing, your audience not only gets a little lost, but disengages, because you're telling me what you're thinking instead of showing me, right? So that's the major difference. The stakes in a solo show, super high, like up here high. That's how we delineate the characters, right? And then each beat, as you begin a scene, that inciting incident that makes that scene happen has to be crystal clear. So in the monologue that we were just looking at, it's just a sort of going back into the past, and I thought this and I thought that, and just making observations. That's a great way to start with your writing, okay? So say you're recording yourself, you're doing the storyteller circle, which I love to assign people to do. Get together a group of people and tell them a story. I think I talked about this in videos on my website, on the blog, 2 weeks ago, right? How to begin recording. Now, that first pass at telling something is just your observations. You are going to do this. You're going to say, oh, well, when I was a kid, my family did this and they did that, and you're going to set the stage. When you do the second pass on that transcription, instead of, no more telling me, no more explaining, show me. Any place that you are actually showing me in that script, if you talk about the family sense of humor and the way my dad told a joke, right? That's a clear indication that we need to see some action. So the second draft would be start with that line and then allow a scene to unfold, okay? And the best way to start, like in a solo show, you can have transitions where a narrator comes in and tells us we're moving place and time. You can totally do that. And then the second piece is to establish the psychological gesture of the character with the very first line that comes out of their mouths. And there's a thing that people do in solo work where they're afraid they're taking too much time. To delineate characters, if I'm going to introduce my family to you, and we are now at a family reunion, B. Do you know what the motherfucker said? Right? You need that pregnant beat in solo work to make storytelling clean. You take the beat, and then the next line, the character is very active, and it's their psychological gesture, right? In my solo show, I thought, oh, okay, this is going to be my psychological gesture of my father. After I redid the monologues and made them very active, which is the second pass after you've made the first recording, don't tell me, show me, okay? If you let the character do the talking and you put it on its feet with the script in your hand, the psychological gesture of that character, in order to make that character clear to your audience, the psychological gesture will emerge if you're very clear about what this character wants from the people in this scene. So I would go back and think about my dad, how he engaged people, how he pulled the spotlight from somebody else, and it was always to present some subject matter in a way that the person was being the most ignorant, outrageously stupid that they could be. So he would start with a supposition. This motherfucker told me, you know what this motherfucker said? Right? I've got you. Do you know what this motherfucker, you want to know what the motherfucker said, right? And the reason and the way that he starts it with, you'll notice that when I'm doing him, it's always a lean, right? He's leaning to the side, but he's also leaning back, which causes you, the audience, to lean forward. That's an observation from watching my dad, okay? So the key in solo work, first of all, is to stop worrying about all this bullshit of, oh, I want to write about my family and what they gonna think. And all of that is an excuse not to write. Show me the character. Because down the road, you're gonna add so much to make this character work in a solo show that they're hardly gonna be recognizable, all right? So just tell the fucking story. And no more of that. Whenever somebody says that to me, oh, well, I don't want to write about my family. I'm like, have you written anything? Right. So you don't even know if you're going to write about your family. So shut the fuck up and start writing. All right. This is where it starts. How does this dad tell a joke? How does he take the spotlight, grab us, and hold it? Okay. It's all going to be in his approach. It's all going to be in how he tells the joke. So you take that beat to introduce the scene, and then you let the lead character in this scene create the inciting incident. Let me tell you about what this motherfucker said to me. The psychological gesture is in how he grabs your attention, right? He leans and he digs into an idea, right? His attack is very aggressive, right? That's his gesture. That's his movement throughout the play. He's always pushing forward the action, right? He's always setting an agenda, pushing the agenda forward of the thing that nobody wants to say, right? If you spent some time putting a person's voice on its feet and creating these monologues, the psychological gesture will emerge in the way that it needs to, right? It's why I don't believe in costume changes. I never change costumes. I was like, the point of the solo show is to watch a human being transform into someone else, right? Otherwise, why are we watching one person for an hour and a half? That's tired, right? So if you focus on really capturing the person's psychology in the rhythm and the way and they speak, in the way they grab your attention, the how of their performance, and what do they want, what's underneath it, what's driving every interaction that they have throughout the play, throughout any monologue. It forces you, the writer, to stop treating your family like a family and treat the people that have inspired you and moved you and had this huge effect on you as characters with whom you have compassion for, who you have studiously observed. Right? The whole thing about solo shows being therapy is actually bullshit. If a solo show is therapy, it's because it's bad writing. If it's good writing, there's a protagonist who wants something, who's flawed, who's perfect, who's wonderful, who's funny, who's admirable, who's fucked up. There are lots of different things, but they're a fully realized person. And they have a way of getting what they want in the world. And your job is to learn how to listen to them. To learn how to listen to understand them, not listen to judge them or listen to describe them. Listen to see how they get what they need, right? And then activate that. Give yourself a problem. In this case, it's my family has a great sense of humor. And it's like an in-joke. That's what this whole monologue talks about, that your humor is an in-joke that most other people don't get. Don't tell me that. Show me that. And show me how. The one character you mentioned first is the dad. So I would say, show me how the dad begins telling a joke that gets everybody in the family on the same page. So one more time. The psychological gesture comes out of the character's imperative. What do they need and how do they get it? Okay? In solo work, you delineate a character by introducing a scene, whatever method you're going to use to introduce a scene, whether it's a light change or a sign or walk to a different set, whatever. You are going to make that change. And that introduces a scene. Then you're going to pause. And then you're going to allow the character who begins the scene, who is starting with the inciting incident, to begin talking. And as they begin talking, they do their gesture. So we know who's talking. We know how they get what they need. We're on board with you. We're with you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes.